Welcome everybody to another episode of Candid Convos, and today's guest is Gary Miles. Gary, thank you for joining us. Please, can you introduce yourself and let people know who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I've been a lawyer in Maryland for 45 years. I recently relocated to Pinehurst, North Carolina. I downsized from the firm which I used to own and manage. I'm now of counsel to it. And I've started a service where I try to help and support as many lawyers as I can. I have a podcast called The Free Lawyer, where all the messages are geared towards being supportive and helpful to the practicing lawyer. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I've started mentoring and coaching lawyers individually.
Mm-hmm. And I know that's not all. I also know that you got a book out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I released a book a couple of weeks ago. It's called Breaking Free. It's a guide to lawyers to achieve personal and professional freedom. And I have in it the 12 prisons of our mind. We all struggle with certain negative mindsets, some of which we're not even aware of, such things as perfectionism and fear of the future and limiting messages from our past and imposter syndrome, things such as that. And I enumerate 12 of them. And in each section of the book, I identify what the prison is, I say how it can affect us, and I give tangible steps to overcome them. And then I have 12 keys to unlock the prisons. There are such things as gratitude, acceptance, mindfulness, living in the present. And again, I describe what the key is, and I lay out tools for us to actually begin applying that key to unlock those prisons in our daily life. It's not a book that you read it and you have accomplished everything by reading it. It really requires daily effort to try to apply those steps in our daily lives.
Well, I'm wondering, would it be fair to say, I'm not saying it's the, but I am thinking it's a, would it be fair to say that your book is a culmination of part of your life's work?
Oh, it's absolutely a culmination of my years of experience, because I've done many, many things in my life wrong. And over 45 years of practice, I've learned how to do them right. And I'm not talking about the tangible pieces of being a lawyer. I'm not talking about how to try a jury case. I'm talking about how to be a lawyer and not be overly stressed and overwhelmed. And to know that the practice serves me instead of I'm owned by my practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the big difference between owning your business and letting your business own you.
Exactly.
And you know, the reason I'm asking this is because while you were, and we've met before, so that our audience knows, no? So I already have an idea of who you are, what you do, what you did. But I'm thinking about how law has changed throughout time and throughout all of those years. So 45 years. I'm thinking all of those conversations, all of the necessary guidance that wasn't there. I believe in this day and age, it might be easier to become an attorney because there's so much guidance, when back in the day there wasn't. Like you were lucky if you could get a mentor, but such a thing as a lawyer coach or such a thing as the type of principles that you put on your book, that's something that you get in a one-on-one conversation with your mentor. That's somebody that already trusts you and has been working with you and developing your career for the last 20 years. So you start getting like those knowledge bombs. But in this day and age, having access to that information, which was just like bizarre, even imagining something like this would be available 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Now it's all on the tube, it's all on the web. Right now it's all over here. So I'm wondering, it's been one hell of a ride, hasn't it?
It really has. When I look back and see how things have changed, and you're right, I didn't think about that. There are a lot of tools and resources available to us now. We can Google any topic we want and we'll get an immediate answer to it. That certainly wasn't true back then. And there was no such thing as a mentor or a coach for lawyers as there is now. And in many ways, things have gotten easier because of technology, computers, how we can copy pieces of documents and use them somewhere else. But in other ways, it's gotten so much harder. We often talk about how hard it is to set boundaries today. I'm sure some of your other guests have talked about the difficulty in setting boundaries. because they're working from home and they have a need to work all the time. And they have a hard time setting that boundary. Well, back in the day, we didn't have computers. And so when I closed the door to the office on Friday night, that was the boundary. I couldn't work from home. Now I might go in and work on a Saturday. And then when I worked, I was working, but it was easy to separate home from work. Nowadays, it's not so easy. And with emails, things have gotten so much more urgent. It used to be I'd send you a letter, Joe. You'd get it 3 or 4 days later. You'd think about it. You'd send me a letter. I'd get it 2 weeks until I sent you something and got a response. Well, now I might send you an email and say, a lawyer might send me an email and say, answer this in 2 hours or else I'll go to the court. I'll complain. I'll do whatever. It's just gotten so much more stressful because of the urgency of the communications. And we used to always talk by phone. I'd call you and say, hey, Joe, we got an issue here. Now we send these emails that can be very strident. It's much easier to be harsh in an email than to call a nice guy like you and say, Joe, let's talk about this. It's easy to say, send an email saying, Joe, you did this wrong. It's become much more difficult.
So I got a statement and a question then. A statement is, this is coming from 45 years of legal experience, so be advised. And the question is, you've traveled a very complete path. You've seen how things were done before. Now you're working with it on the technological aspect of it, digitally. You're working remotely. I'm pretty sure it wasn't like that maybe 15, 20 years ago. You've made the transition to having your firm, to becoming an advisor on your firm. So now you also work on this vertical in which you bring pretty much hope to all type of new attorneys. So what does this freedom represent to you?
Freedom represents to me being true to myself and my values and finding fulfillment in being of service to others. As long as I'm true to who I am and I can find fulfillment in helping and serving others, then I feel truly free. I don't feel knowing what I'm in charge of, which is me, my thoughts and my feelings and my actions, and knowing what I have no power over, which is other people and other circumstances, then I'm no longer controlled by those things and I feel free.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something a lot of people aspire to. And I am really grateful that we get a chance to see what your life's work or part of your life's work, because I wouldn't say that this book and potentially what you're doing right now, it's again like the last best thing that you've done. I just think this is the next step. So I am very grateful for seeing what you're able to accomplish with all of that experience, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else can you do with this, because it's just a stepping stone, right? This is just another resource for people to become the best version of themselves as they can. Now you get the opportunity to see that face to face and to do that with other people when, like, this is how the conversation started. Back in the day, it wasn't like that. Like back in the day, they just threw you out to the wolves and you better know how to fend up for yourself or find a very strong ally, and you need to move quickly, and you're probably going to move from place to place because there's not such thing as stability. It is a place filled with sharks, especially when you're thinking big law. So there are so many dynamics and so many difficult situations out there to deal with, and you offer a point of support. So yeah, I want to thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for having me on your podcast. I really, really appreciate you. You're a very warm and positive guy. And I'm so grateful we connected here.
Yeah, I am grateful as well. Gary, before we log off, please let people know where they can find you and what you can do.
My website is garymiles.net, and they can email me at gary@garymiles.net, or I'm very, very accessible on LinkedIn under my name, Gary Miles. And if you have any questions or I can be a support to you in any way, please reach out to me.
Mm-hmm. And guys, please do. I can tell you Gary is very active on LinkedIn. So if you send him a DM, he'll probably reply.
I will. I promise.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. And I hope I get to see you as a returning guest anytime soon.